The role to fill is one thing, but to actually fill the role is a whole other thing. Many fathers are given the opportunity to be a good father, be a good provider, be a reliable partner. We're all given that opportunity, but most fathers don't fulfill that.
When you're not taught how to act right and you have to go and try to make those things up for yourself, a lot of the times you're going to find out that you've actually acted wrong. There was a story back in the 90s where a woman's adrenaline kicked in and she lifted a car off of her baby that was pinned under the car. So there's like, and that really happened. So I'm not about to put limits on anybody.
Hello and welcome to James Cordner, my guest for Read the Room, Real Student Stories. Full disclosure, James Cordner is not exactly my but we're students together in autonomy. So it's still a student story, right?
Yes.
Nice. So the reason why I asked you to come and interview with me on Read the Room is because we're talking about dating, we're talking about relationships and reading people, understanding people. And I think that real men, like real men, not fake men, not posturing men, but like actual real men, are hard to find in our society. And in my mind, you exemplify what a real man is. What's it like to be a real man?
Honestly, I kind of just found myself doing it because there is no other option. There is no backup. There's no one coming to save us over here, and so we have to step up to the plate in my household and do what we got to do to make sure that things run smoothly for our children and for our marriage. My wife and I have been together for almost 11 years, and so it's very important that we're communicating and getting things done and making sure that our kids are taken care of. So in having those goals, I've found myself in a position where I have no choice but to do things that are necessary to put others before myself, but also at the same time keeping in mind that my own health, both mental and physical, is also important, because that's not taken care of, intended to, I won't be able to take care of the people who rely on me. So it's a very delicate balance. Sometimes it feels like a tightrope walk, and a lot of times feel like a failure. But it's about, not quitting. Sometimes you complain, but you can't quit. Sometimes you might find yourself complaining, and that's I accept complaints. I'm not one of these guys that doesn't accept a complaint. But what are you going to do about it? That's what I think is makes the difference. Is, are you going to quit? No, you can't quit. Not an option.
So you said that before you weren't responsible,
That's right.
long time ago, before you were responsible. What were you like? Were you ignoring the needs of your spouse or your girlfriend, or how did you transform from the guy who was not responsible into the guy who is responsible?
That's a good question. When my first son was born back in 2016, it really changed. Like, some people might even call it like a paradigm shift. It really changed my outlook on not only my own life and the responsibilities that I needed to, live up to, the type of person that I needed to be in order to be a good example for this little boy. But my outlook on the world in general changed a lot. I was a very destructive person in my youth. After my dad passed away in 2005, I became a very destructive person, and that led to alcohol abuse. And then in 2016, when my firstborn came into our lives, I understood that I actually helped create something where for a decade plus, I had been focused on more of the destructive side of things. Really, that is the moment that changed my outlook on life. And then it still took some time. It still took a lot of time to have my have one part of my consciousness catch up with that other part of the consciousness, where it's like, oh, I'm finally aware of these things, and whoa, the startling realization that there's more to life than just being in the ego and only focusing on myself and doing all these destructive things. And then it took some legwork to catch up to that. After he was born, it took about another 5 years, and I finally got my act together enough to like get sober and clean up the alcohol and everything out of my life. And now it's more like just filling these shoes and making sure that I'm doing the right thing on a daily basis for these guys, because we have three children now, and so it's a really interesting life. I never really thought that I would find myself in this role. I've always looked at it like in certain ways, such as what do you do when you're under pressure? How do you respond? Because I've always thought of myself as kind of a cool under pressure type of person. I don't always live up to that, but it's always something that I've aspired to be cool under pressure. Where I'm going with this is that like I don't know if I ever really planned on being a father. But or having this role to fill, and so it's been very rewarding, really.
The role to fill is one thing, but to actually fill the role is a whole other thing. Many fathers are given the opportunity to be a good father, be a good provider, be a reliable partner. They're all given that opportunity, but most fathers don't fulfill that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's important to understand that I guess not. We can't really know what's going on with every one of those individual men. Some have deep-seated trauma that is very difficult for them to get over, and for the idea of fatherhood is terrifying to them. And their coping mechanism to that trauma and to that fear is something that looks like abandonment and turns out to be abandonment in most cases, either emotional or physical or it's or mental abandonment. These types of these different forms of abandonment are run rampant through society and culture these days, at least in the United States where I'm from. So what I look at it from being a child of divorced parents, I look at it through a certain lens where I got to know my real father later on in my life. I didn't really grow up around him too much. I didn't really get to know him too much when I was a child, but after I'd be kind of became more of an adult, I got to know him a little bit, and we got to talking. And it seems to me that he had a little bit of his opportunities to be the father that he thought he could be taken from him, but it was due to his own actions because he was pretty abusive. And so he did some things and didn't really it didn't really turn out well for him, but then he got his act together, and unfortunately when he got clean and sober, it was too late, and my mother wasn't able to invite him back, and it was a bad scene. So on one hand, it's like, well, you did things and you have to live up, you have to accept responsibility for the things that you did. But in the aftermath, he was kind of denied the opportunity to be the father that he might have been able to be. So I see that as like that could be a lot of men's stories out there. It could be a lot, and it's really sad for the kids, but that's the important thing to understand about being an adult is being coming into maturity is all about realizing that your actions are your own, and you got to accept responsibility for your actions. You can't go blaming it on other people. Even when you're drunk or on, you still did those things, and
But
you
also,
are.
the other
Go
thing
ahead.
is that he learned those behaviors somewhere. Like if he never
Well,
learned how to be abusive to another person when he was drunk, he wouldn't necessarily, maybe, I'm not sure, but like it's possible, but this was behavior that was repeated from learned in his childhood.
or it's a coping mechanism for things that weren't there, and it wasn't really exactly learned behavior, but it was behavior that was adopted in place of things that were absent. And so it's really difficult to say. It's really difficult to say because when you're not taught how to act right, and you have to go and try to make those things up for yourself, a lot of the times you're going to find out that you've actually acted wrong. And so it's a really important thing to be able to understand the difference between right and wrong action, and to be able to communicate to young people that in order for you to be considered mature in any culture, really, the first step is being able to take responsibility for your actions and to know the difference between right and wrong. So that way you're not going out there and stealing from people and doing all sorts of heinous things to people, innocent people, peace loving people that don't deserve those things done to them. And so it's really important, and it's a big part of my life to kind of communicate that out to people. And a lot of things that how I teach my children, that's a really big focus on the difference between right and wrong and how it applies equally to everybody, because it's just such a missing piece in the world. The cornerstone to freedom is morality. It's not really up to me to force anybody into acting any certain way, but we can all call out wrongdoing when we see it, and a lot of men today would rather focus on a football game than maybe the different ways that everybody's kind of being fleeced, but that's probably a different conversation. Sorry.
So what about toxic masculinity?
I know that's like a more recent buzz phrase, or whatever that you would refer to it as, that's kind of popped up in maybe the last like 10 or 15 years. At least the earliest recollection I have of ever hearing it might have been a decade ago. Not to say it hasn't existed for longer. That phrase, toxic masculinity, is something that's very perplexing to me, because on one hand, you can definitely see how some men might act in very negative ways toward women and other people, or even other men, and that's not beneficial to anybody. And on the other hand, it's also a way to disparage true masculinity of a protector. And there is a big difference between the upper body strength of a full grown male versus the upper body strength of a full grown female. But there was a story back in the 90s where a woman's adrenaline kicked in and she lifted a car off of her baby that was pinned under the car. So and that really happened. So I'm not about to put limits on anybody. As men, our goal should be to lift women up, and to see our women. And I know that sounds very possessive, but I'm my woman's man, so like I have no, we share life together. So I want to lift her up, because as high as she's lifted up, I can be right there next to her. And so that's my goal. And so it's just like this. I mean, I don't know too much about this whole toxic masculinity thing, because I don't participate in those spheres of influence. Like, but it seems to me to be a real problem in some cases, and in other cases, it might be just regular masculinity that is being kind of tampered down in order to make the strong men weak. So it's a cultural shift that's happening in one way, and so it's very difficult to really know how to navigate this space of what's toxic masculinity. So
It's like
I
another division tactic
yeah,
where women are encouraged to be anti-men and men are encouraged to be anti-women in order to create a gap or chasm. I want to ask you about something you said. You said, she's my woman and I'm her man. Can you elaborate on that? Like, what does it mean to be her man?
I think that there's certain roles that primarily fall on the shoulders of a man, and there's certain roles that do primarily fall on the shoulders of a woman. And I think for a healthy marriage, like there needs to be kind of an understanding of that. So when the 150-pound thing needs to be lifted up off the garage floor, well, I guess I'm gonna go and do that.
Yeah, and it's
And
funny because it's physical. Like if your woman is a bodybuilder and you aren't, she may be the one lifting it. So it's kind of like personal, but in every relationship, there is the duties of one person and the other, and they complement each other, right?
sure, I mean, I'm using the term man and woman in this aspect because that's the relationship that I'm in, is with a woman. And so
Well, no, but
people,
like it could be man and woman, and the woman is actually the stronger one than the man, right?
I
So that
understand.
can happen. Or like you were talking about protector, and me being from Poland, a lot of Polish women are protectors. And I even heard it earlier today on some video where a man said that the bus system has a security system and it's an old lady with a rock in her purse. And if anybody's drunk or belligerent, that old lady picks up her purse, and nobody's more drunk and belligerent because everybody knows she's got a rock in her purse. So she doesn't need the strength. She just like runs on reputation. And there's thousands of these little old ladies throughout Poland. So it's not about, I mean, I think the weakness is more societal, like what we expect of people, than the actual physical weakness. In many cultures, older women are actually the most powerful of society.
I could agree with that. And I mean, I don't experience that in my own personal life. But because
Not
a lot of
yet.
my
Your
well,
wife is
not
still
yet.
young. She's
That's
gonna
right.
hit that menopause. Her wisdom is going to explode, and then you're gonna be in awe.
But to elaborate a little bit more like on that, it's just simply because I'm a man and she's a woman and we spend our life together. And that's pretty much it. And there's certain things that I'm really good at, and so there's things that she's really good at. And she uses the things that she's really good at to lift me up. And when I and then it's my turn to lift her up. And that's what we try to do. So I'm her man, and she's my woman. It's not about being possessive, it's just about being proud and,
Nice.
and honoring her, and saying I put her needs uh at least as equal to my own, or if not before my own needs. But again, because it's only true, like I can't fulfill anybody's needs if I'm not taking care of myself. So yeah, got to go back to that idea as well. But it's all about lifting each other up. Because what is a marriage really, other than just kind of an alchemical combination between two things, you know? And so it really does come back down to that, even the inner masculine and feminine that a lot of people have within themselves, like feminine aspects and masculine aspects in each individual person, however prominent or hidden either one of those things are. The inner marriage is like kind of the you know another important aspect of that as well. But I mean, anyways, that's totally different conversation. But the alchemical process of bringing together the feminine and the masculine on more of a physical plane between two individuals is kind of what I meant by my woman, her man.
What do you think makes a good husband? Like how,
Oh,
what
well,
do you need to be a good husband?
I think a lot of the days I'm still trying to figure that out. My wife and I both come from a very similar background in terms of our parents being divorced while we were at very young ages. So it's really tough because we're trying to figure this out as we go. But being patient and communicating and having some humility, and again owning up to something when you're wrong, and taking responsibility and being honest, like these are all the traits of a good person, really. Like it's so, if you're doing those things and you're in a relationship, well, that's your best friend, really. Like it's your best friend, and you want to be together every day, and you want to assume responsibility for these things that are going on in life, and you're going to tackle this thing together. You want to share your life with this person. And so the same way that you would treat anybody decently, you treat your wife just as decent, maybe a little extra, because you know they're your special person. you know you've dedicated yourself to them, and you made a vow. If you're legally married, or even married at all, and legally married, or even in the eyes of God, it doesn't matter. The ceremony that we performed, there's legality behind it, because there's certain things that the government would prevent her from doing if we weren't married, to our understanding at least. So without getting into those kinds of details, it seemed to us to be the right move at the time. But it was more so because we love each other so much, and we want to be able to be there for each other, and it just makes it a lot easier um, that way in some cases, to have there be certain legality behind it. But in terms of like in front of God, yeah, like yeah, that's a vow, that's a promise that you've made. for better or worse, in sickness or in health. These kind of this kind of cliche vow that you hear in the movies. It's a real thing.
What is an alpha man?
I don't know.
Have you ever met an alpha man?
I've met men who probably in their heads call themselves alpha.
And
I'm not impressed.
so what do you think an alpha man should be? Like if those men are not alpha, what, like if alpha was alpha, what would alpha be?
I have no idea. I have no idea how to answer that question because hierarchical structures aren't a part of my focus.
Nice. This is a sorry. Is this a good time to mention you're also a YouTube creator and your thing?
Maybe, but I mean, to consider yourself an alpha also puts you in a position where maybe you consider yourself to be the dominator or the dominating force in your familial life. And to me, if you seek to dominate over people, that just is wrong. Dominating over people is a wrongdoing. It's a claim of master and slave relationship, and that you want to be the master and that people should listen to you. Now, there is a difference between understanding your role as a man in a family where, yeah, the women's nature is probably more of a gentle and nurturing nature, but that doesn't mean that men can't be gentle and nurturing as well. It just means, I think, the primary mode of thought kind of lies in this lane for women to be more of a nurturing, gentle role model for children, and a male's more kind of natural mode of thought or action might be in the lane of defending the group and going and making sure the group is safe from any harm that might come, or anybody that might come to violate the group and the family. And so, yeah, like some people take that idea and apply this hierarchical structure of alpha, beta, gamma, whatever to it. And to me, that just seems a little too animalistic and primitive for us to actually, kind of see outside of ourselves and see the group as a well-oiled machine, all parts working together in harmony to make sure that the job is getting done. So if you're saying to yourself, I'm alpha of my family, I kind of just want to ask you to really think if that is something that kind of, if that idea really communicates equality within your family, or if you're kind of sectioning off people in order to dominate them. It's a very strange phenomena that I've heard of in more recent years. I don't partake in it, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what else
That's a
to
very
really
good
think about
answer.
that. Yeah.
And not only is it a very good answer, it exceeded all of my expectations of what you could have said about alpha and non-alpha, because I was expecting you to go more in like posturing and faking it, but you were talking about family dynamics, which is very, very powerful and very interesting way of looking at it.
From my view, it comes from a place of like, you I don't know who really said it. I think the quote is attributed to Albert Einstein. And no, I'm not claiming that makes me smarter because I know an Einstein, a supposed Einstein quote. But the quote is, "You would never judge a goldfish by how it climbs a tree." And so I take that idea and apply it into a family setting. And I think to myself, well, there's certain things that my wife is going to be really, really good at. There's certain things that my children are going to be very, very good at. And there's certain things that I'm going to be very, very good at. And when the time comes for us to take those things that those really well, those really well, the skills,
Developed.
the well developed skills, uh, and to apply them into a problem solving, into some sort of setting where we have to solve a problem, or any setting at all. Well, guess who's in charge right now? It's my wife or my son or the other one of the other kids, because they know what to do and I might not. So we're gonna rely on them for a minute. So it's the role of who's in charge or who's the alpha is interchangeable. And so there's certain times where it's like, no, you guys got to listen to me because I'm gonna know the best way out of this situation or how to deal with this, you know. And so yeah, that's another thought I have about this whole situation. So people that are posturing them, I mean, these guys out there, you notice that they all kind of look the same. It's kind of weird. It's like I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that, but a lot of these people that like consider themselves alpha males, that are so ready and quick to like label themselves as such, they're usually they're usually not with their wives. And they're usually kind of abusive, and they think that just because they're yelling that makes them right. I don't know. I haven't really got much else to think about these types of guys. I don't know. It's something that I'm not too familiar with, but I'm familiar enough with. I've run across it a few times, and it seems to me like that's kind of how they all kind of act. I don't know.
So what do you think that young men need to hear these days? Like, what is the most important message that you would have for young men out there?
You own yourself, period. You don't own anyone else. Your body is your property, and other people's bodies are their property. And you have no right to dominate over other people just because you're big and strong and you have wide shoulders and a beard. It's your strength could be used for so much good in the world, and you use it to dominate over other people and to follow orders given to you by the master, the ruling class, and you focus on football instead of how to better your family and to ensure that future generations are insulated from slavery. And so if you really put your nose to the grindstone and get some work done, we can make a better future for the kids that have to live in it. Because one thing's for sure, we want to focus on the here and now and not get psyched out by the future and let it terrify us. But we know if one thing's for sure is that future will happen. And our kids and our grandkids are going to have to be the ones that live in that. And how do you want them to live? In some dystopian nightmare, science fiction bullshit? Or do we want to have freedom and prosperity, the likes of which we've never seen in our lifetimes? We have to separate ourselves from this egotistical selfishness that we feel that we want it, we want it, we want it, and understand that sometimes you're not the guy that gets it. You're the guy that has to make it happen for the next generation so they can have it. And so we have to understand that, man, it's time that we set our own selfish motives aside and try to figure out a different system, figure out a parallel economy, a parallel system that we can start setting up in order to exit the one that's keeping us down. It's like this force of gravity almost that's been kind of just turned up to 10 times its normal value, and it's pushing down on all of us. And we can, if we all just worked together to push back, we could actually make a difference in this. And so anyways, without sounding like a complete lunatic, I think that we need to reprioritize as men. I think it's time to reprioritize and understand what's really valuable in life. And in my opinion, what's really valuable in life is freedom and prosperity for the future generations. And maybe we get a little bit of that for ourselves as time goes on. But while we're young and while we can, have the strength, and even some of the older guys, I mean, what's young anymore? You know what I mean? 50, like 60 years old, 60. I've seen 60-year-old guys. I'm like, how old? You're 60? You look like you're 40. Yeah, but that's my own little childish nature kind of peeking through where I'm like, oh, the grown-ups are here. And it's like, no, dude, you're 40 years old almost. You're the grown-ups now. Like, it's like, oh, shoot, yeah, I am the grown-ups now. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of men are lost and they've got prescribed beliefs that are handed down to them through culture. And they shouldn't blame their parents. Their parents probably love them very, very much. And they did everything that they could for them to make sure that they were safe and that they had clothes and food and, and some semblance of a happy life. But there's also kind of a dark side to it where perhaps some of the things that you believe are given to you and not discovered. And so I'm a big fan of discovering things that you hold as values instead of just kind of latching on to the values that might be prescribed to you from, like, I don't know, a previous generation. And so it's all about reclaiming that autonomy and making sure that we preserve it and make sure that future generations can have it as well.
Wow, that was great. Thank you very much for being such an interesting guest on my channel, and I really appreciate all your comments.
Well, thank you. Should I tell people where to find me?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
All right. So I run Voluntarist Academy. And if you are into the idea of that of all human interaction being grounded in consent and moral integrity, you should come over and hang out at Voluntarist Academy at voluntaristacademy.com or on YouTube, the Voluntarist Academy channel. So come on over and we can learn about natural law and voluntary, peaceful interactions between consenting human beings.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.